Yeah. Tell them your experience. Anyway, many thanks for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, so how can I get back at him? For that one. Hello, everybody. Yes. You know, these workshops have been going for a while now, and they're usually fairly informal. And so Michael and I do seem to have this problem with communication, as in technological communication. And so I'd organised to do this trivia quiz. And I get here, and Michael says, no, you're first up. And I'm going, but you can't have the trivia quiz first. And anyway, so I'm now doing a totally unprepared talk that's not the trivia quiz. And let's see where it takes us. My name's Debbie Waldren. I'm a non-registered doctor as opposed to deregistered doctor. I choose to be not registered at this point in time, and I'm just entering my final year in my degree in Western Herbal Medicine. You know, I had one of my lecturers joke that I'd gone over to the dark side, and I feel very strongly that in actual fact I've come into the light. Not just with cannabis, but with all herbal medicine, with all natural medicine. Like, God, have we gone wrong. And it's been my experiences, both as a GP in a country town and as a cancer patient, that caused me to really, really question orthodox medicine. I'm 2 years in remission from stage 4D melanoma. Thank you. I'd like to say that cannabis was the thing that put me in remission, but in actual fact it was dendritic cell therapy, which was a treatment that I had to access in Germany. So you can say that the last 5 or 6 years has been a bit of a struggle, both in staying alive and, you know, obviously financially, because, you know, we have received no government help, even though it's the TGA who says that we can't have this treatment in the country because there's not enough peer-reviewed trials about it. When in actual fact the man who pioneered this treatment left the University of Göttingen to set up a clinic in Duderstadt, to get it out of the hands of Big Pharma and the university academia. He keeps his own records and his own data, and he saved my life. So that's all I can say about that, really. And anyone who wants to know any more about that is quite welcome to ask me for details. Nothing is a panacea for cancer. Nothing will guarantee a cancer cure. But I think it's really, really important that people know their options when it comes to cancer. There's a pretty scary, I think it's on YouTube now, out there, called The Truth About Cancer. It's well worth a watch, and will open your eyes. And the problem with cannabis and cancer is, of course, that by the time people seek alternative treatment, it's already too late, because we believe our oncologists, and we believe that they're trying to do the best thing for us. So most people will wait until the oncologist says there's nothing further we can do before they seek other alternative treatment. And a lot of the time, the pharmaceutical industry rules is if they're providing the cancer drug, then you're not allowed to have any other treatment. If I'd followed those rules, I'd be dead now, because the Yervoy and Keytruda, which were the immunomodulator type of chemo for melanoma, where it changes the cells in your immune system to attack the cancer, actually just really left me with sequelae. You know, my immune system is very different now. I had two bouts in hospital, 3 long courses of steroids, and so, yeah, I'd find it interesting that the complications that I got were actually not from the cancer, but from the orthodox treatment. So, and a little before all this happened, and I could, trying to tell my life story, in actual fact, we'd be here all bloody day, so I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible so that we can move on to the really interesting stuff. But a little before I was diagnosed with the secondary melanoma, my enemies in my hometown decided that, they had not wanted me to set up my own practice, and decided that was not a good situation. And after I had a meeting with Lawrence Springborg, because I was concerned about 15 cases of what I thought was medical negligence at Gundawindi Hospital. Oops, said the name of the town. Shit, you didn't hear that. And he actually, this was when he had dissolved the medical board in Queensland. Poor bugger, he actually did try, but I mean, they just replaced them with more of the same. And set up the health ombudsman thing, where apparently you now go if you have a complaint. And so he actually referred it to crimes of misconduct. And they came back to me that there were 12 cases they felt needed to be answered. However, the investigation was handed over to one of the cronies at Darlingtown Health, and it was whitewashed and nothing happened. And it's a little bit unfortunate, when you lose your career in your business and your health, and it didn't make any difference. I was the Indigenous doctor for Gundawindi, so I serviced Toomelah and Boggabilla, and I have never really been replaced, and that's like nearly 6 years ago. But they managed to notify me to APRA and the medical board because of narcotic use. I have several problems in my spine, and was on prescribed narcotics, and basically that's another long and nasty story, but the upshot is that it was basically what was a health issue they used to act. And this is something that I think everybody should be aware of. I don't know, certainly it's APRA and the medical board and that sort of group, but malicious notifiers are completely protected under law. You cannot ever go after them, civilly, legally, criminally, however. And it is almost certain that the medical board will believe the notifier, and the onus is on you to prove otherwise. And they have the power to stop you practising by simply saying that they believe you're a danger to the public. They don't need any proof. They don't need, you don't. So basically you are guilty before you're proven innocent. And in that way, they basically shut you down overnight. So my 1,000-odd patients basically lost their doctor overnight. And not only that, and this is the thing that I still find totally incredible, that we have no way of making them accountable for this, is that I was not allowed to action any pathology results or imaging results. I was not allowed to transfer any records. Which I felt was a really dangerous situation. I'm sure you'd all agree. But that was okay, apparently. Anyway, so that's another aspect of the sorts of things that have happened to me, is why I'm standing here today talking to you, and for the fact that I'm a compulsive talker. I can basically talk underwater, they tell me. Anyway, so basically that happened, then I got the melanoma, and then I was in remission, had a few grandchildren born, which I never thought I was going to see, and decided to go back and do a degree in Western herbal medicine because I would need a shingle. Now, just to let you know that after almost 6 years, at the end of last year, I finally had a decision handed down from QCAT, because it was referred to the Civil Court in Queensland, to say that I wasn't allowed to reapply for my registration for 1 week. So, yes. So, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. So as I say, my enemies managed to destroy my business and career and my health, but they did not get me struck off. So that's why I make the distinction of being a non-registered doctor and not a deregistered doctor. Yeah, I think so too. What I'd really love, of course, is to come back and treat you all as an integrative GP, but in the meantime I can at least be a herbalist And in an ideal world, of course, that's where cannabis would be, wouldn't it? As a herbal medicine. So now, I think that's enough of an intro about me. Now, is there anything in particular, any of you, like, okay, I'll ask another question first. How many people is their first time here? Wow. Oh my God, cannabis virgins. And how many of you know absolutely nothing about cannabis and cannabis medicine? Okay, well, we'll start right from the beginning, and I'm sure all the others will bear with me. And you might really like to sort of come back and, you know, for the trivia quiz, because it'll be a fun way of getting more information into you, if you know what I mean. And sometimes you tend to remember things better if it's associated with something that's fun. Because, yeah, all of this stuff can get a bit dry. You know, a lot of it's, you know, so much of it is science, which is quite ironic, really, isn't it? Okay, so cannabis is a flowering plant that belongs to the Cannabinaceae family. There's only a couple of other plants in that family, one of which is hops. And the cannabis plant contains many chemicals that we call phytochemicals. So they're the active chemicals that are found in the plant. And if they affect our activity in our bodies, we call them bioactive. So all plants have some sort of bioactive properties. And that's what makes herbal medicine so utterly fascinating. So cannabis has, but sort of peculiar, that you can find cannabinoids in other plants, but not the same way as in the cannabis plant. But yes, they do, you know, it's not totally just cannabis. And so the main one that everyone's heard about is THC, and that's the one that's psychoactive. There are some other minor cannabinoids that can be psychoactive as well, but for our purposes today, that's the psychoactive one. And CBD is the non-psychoactive one. And that's the one that you'll have heard about that we treat the paediatric epilepsy with. And both THC and CBD have wonderful medicinal qualities. They are completely separate, but they do also have an overlapping actions as well. So they complement one another. And I think the best way to describe that is that Michael touched, and by the way, Michael, that was such an excellent, wherever you are, that was just such an excellent introduction. Like, I didn't get to clap you. That was just brilliant. I honestly, I think that's the best one I've ever heard. It was just brilliant. That's why I went out and had a smoke, because I thought, God, he's going to be hours yet. But no, anyway, oh God, now I've forgotten what I was saying. Yes, that's his fault too. So we're up to THC and CBD, and so basically they complement one another. So that was what Michael was saying was the problem with the hydro pot that flooded our streets from the 90s onwards, because it has really no CBD in it. And none of the cannabinoids really should act in isolation, because like with any time that you isolate something from a plant, you get adverse effects. And that's exactly what happened with hydro. We just know now why. I mean, I always knew that there was something radically wrong with this hydro, but I didn't know why back then. Now I do. And it's because it had no CBD. So that's a really important thing to remember, especially when answering people's questions about whether it causes schizophrenia and drug-induced psychosis. Now, I'll come back to that in a little while. I'll do a little bit more about the plant itself. So there's 3 species. Historically, Cannabis sativa, which historically is cultivated hemp. That's what sativa means. You've got Cannabis indica, and that's the medicinal cannabis, and that's named because of its origins, or when it was found, was India. And the third one that a lot of people don't really know much about is Cannabis ruderalis, which is a bit more of a, let's say, primitive species that was sort of found across Russia, and it's just a little plant, doesn't have very much THC in it, does have a bit of CBD. So that was how it was before the 1970s, when recreational use caused just a massive, opened the floodgates for hybridisation. So those three species now have come very, very blurred, and people will talk about a sativa strain or an indica strain. Ruderalis they have used to cross with an indica to make a shorter plant that's not as bushy for illegal indoor growing. And that will drop the THC content, of course, but, you know, that's the game, is, you know, trying to use the plant to get the best that you want for yield and things like that. You know, we are talking about an illegal market after all. So they're the three different types. And people will say, oh, that's a sativa and that's an indica and this does this and that does that. Well, you know, I think it's probably easier to talk in traits. You know, a certain strain will have sativa traits. It will give you more energy. You will feel really creative. You will get lots of things done, you know. Yeah, not all cannabis sort of puts you to sleep and makes you like really stoned. That's more the indica traits. They're the ones that, you know, that will cause you to, you know, crash out on the couch or, you know, whatever. Very good pain relief from the indica strains, very good muscle relaxant effect. So that's their use there. And of course, you know, there are strains that are all sativa and all indica, but most now are a mix of the two. So it's just easier to talk in traits. So this is what this particular strain, and a wonderful site to look at, if you're wanting to know about cannabis strains, is Leafly. And I've noticed over the last few years, like, how much more medical cannabis information is on there. They've really taken off with the medical cannabis stuff. And the information's not too bad. Like, I probably wouldn't put it up there with PubMed, but it's not too bad. And it's got just like little graphs of, you know, euphoria, anxiety, headache, you know, all the adverse effects and blah, 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 and how they think that strain comes in. So you can have a look at the strain and say, oh, geez, that looks like it might be good for migraine. You know, muscle relaxant is up there, you know, sedative is up there. So, and this is where, you know, people, once they know a little bit, you know, you can make a stab at the sort of cannabis that you think would suit yourself, you know, once you're educated. And it's not really that hard. And it's really interesting, and there is so much stuff out there. A couple, for the people jotting things down, the other sites that I'd highly recommend are, for a start, it's the site, of course, is Granny Storm Crow's List. And that's like the go-to Bible for recorded research on cannabis. I think this little old lady, I think it'll probably be the death of her in the end because the research on cannabis is like, I don't know, 50-fold by, you know, when she started it. Yes. Granny Storm Crow's, apostrophe S, List. Another site that puts up really good quality research in an easy to sort of follow format, like, you know, it's quite directed, is called Hemp Edification, one word. Hemp Edification. Just the way it sounds. And the third one that I'd say, you know, sort of for user-friendly and good quality research is cannabis.net. And of course, if you want to get really in depth, then you just go to PubMed or Google Scholar, and that's getting into your more scientific, you know, stuff, you know. And I mean, yes, yeah, pub standing for public medical information type thing. A lot of it, you know, you'll have to pay for the full article, but a lot of it is free as well. You know, you'll soon learn to navigate it. it's if you want to go that in depth. But yeah, you're starting to get into the really scientific articles and stuff there. Any more questions about that sort of thing before I go on, about where to look for information?
Was there a site you mentioned before Granny Storm closed?
Leafly. Yep. Again, like leaf. That's how it's spelled. Leaf like on the tree. And I find that's just a really user-friendly site. Yeah, I mean, it's always been the most user-friendly site just for recreational cannabis, but now they put lots and lots of information on there about medical cannabis and lots of links. And it's, it's not... actually, do any of you know how to judge whether what you're reading is reasonable research? Like, would you like a couple of guidelines about that? I mean, I know that's sort of, in a way, getting off topic, but, a lot of this is about educating yourselves, and if you know how to do it online, it makes it a lot easier. Mind you, not that I'm an expert either. So, the first thing you've got to look at is where it's come from. So, is it the British Medical Journal? Is it phytochemistry? Is it a journal that's reputable? And, they just sound reputable, don't they? That's pretty easy. They don't put themselves up as journals, really, if they don't have some sort of reputation, if you know what I mean. So that's the first thing you do, is look where it comes from. Generally, if you use PubMed and Google Scholar, you will get... good quality studies, but whether those studies themselves are good quality is what you have to be able to judge. So the first thing is, where has it come from? The next thing is, when was it published? What year did it come out? Because obviously, with the history, if you're looking at the history, then fine, read as far back as you want to go. But if you're looking for recent research, you're looking for in the last 5 years. The next thing that you look at is what the study's actually about. Read the abstract. Get a feel for it. Have a look at how they've designed the study. And I'll just digress a little bit, because this is important too in your understanding of how we can research cannabis medicine to satisfy all those people that think it's... Yeah, but anyway, oh God, I've just forgotten what I was saying again. It's your fault, Michael. All your fault.
You only got 5 more minutes anyway.
Oh, God, okay. Oh, my God, we've only just got started, haven't we? I'm probably boring the pants off you guys today. It's been quite heavy.
No, anyway, she could talk all day.
Yeah, okay, I'll just finish this bit.
Come back after lunch.
Yep, I'm coming back for the trivia quiz after lunch, so I'll just finish this little bit about how you judge the studies, because I think it's really important. Okay, so the pharmaceutical company wants double-blind randomised control trials where you account for every variable. Do you understand what I mean by variable? Like to take into account what other diseases they've got, what other medications they're on, blah, 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 blah. All those things that could confound the result. So you want as few variables as possible. And they're usually studying a single molecule. So that's pretty easy. But when it comes to any plant, not just cannabis, there's hundreds of phytochemicals in it. You just cannot apply the same model of research to it. And unfortunately, this is what they base evidence-based medicine on, that I'm sure all of you have heard about, and which I've thought has been crap from the word go, because it's vastly funded by the pharmaceutical companies. And these are the clinical guidelines that we can be disciplined for now if we don't follow. Anyway, if we get... Oh God, I've done it again, haven't I? It's because he's hurrying me up now. I get it, it's Michael's fault. I'm in the blame game today, aren't I? So it's... Okay, so back to... So that's just explaining that part. So then you look at sample size. If it's 5 people, then, yeah, I don't think you're going to get a significant result. It might give you a direction in which to go, so you don't dismiss it altogether. But, yeah, so you're looking for a large sample size. And you're looking for a study that does try and attend to the variables to make the groups as similar as possible so that there's less, chance of the results being because of something else. Does everyone follow that concept? Okay, so that's the next thing you do is you have a look and see how they've tried to get rid of all those things that might confound the result. Sometimes you can't. As long as they tell you that, though. The best studies are the ones that actually tell you what their limitations are, and a lot of them do these days. They say, we think this, but we know our sample size wasn't big enough or blah, blah, blah. They're good studies that will do that. So that's another thing to look for. And remember that if the language is beyond you, remember your Latin roots, believe it or not, and that's not the men you slept with. These are things like hypercholesterolemia, like scary word, eh? But hyper means above, cholesterol is cholesterol, and emia is blood. High cholesterol in the blood. And so, if you know your Latin roots, you can actually make a stab at what a lot of those words mean. So, and that makes it a little less scary as well, because it brings it, because you feel like at least you can make an attempt at what it means. And lots of times you'll be right. So what do you think hypoglycemia would be? Hypo, below, that's how you remember. Hypo, below, hyper, above. So hypoglyce is sugar, because you can make a stab at that anyway, and emia, blood. So that's another little thing to make it a little easier to interpret what you're reading. And oftentimes you can just digress, and if you put it in, to Google just to explain that word, it'll come up with something you can understand. Or you get someone like me and you say, what the fuck does that mean? And that's often the preferred way, because as you've gathered, I don't mind talking. Well, as I've been given the wound up. Now, any last questions? Oh, yes?
You mentioned that hops is in the same family. Has it been tested for usable, like CBD or...
Good question.
Just repeat the question.
Oh, okay, she's asking hops is in the same family as cannabis sativa, or cannabis. And I've just said that's a very good question. What it means is that they have a substance in that plant that's capable of attaching to the receptors, CB1 and CB2, and probably more receptors. So it doesn't necessarily mean that will have the same result, because of the difference in the way that particular cannabinoid molecule is structured. So it may do something completely different. But I must admit I haven't researched it in depth as to what hops can do. So there you go, there's your first one. See if you can find out what the difference is. And with a little bit of basic knowledge, does go a long way. And you'll find the more you read, the easier it gets to understand, and the easier it will be to direct questions, what you want to find out. Well, it's been a very odd talk. I feel like I just talked about myself, Michael, honestly.
I'm going to kick you off.
I know you are. I'll see you all this afternoon for the trivia quiz. Do some Googling and prepare. There's lots of different categories. I'm going.
Yeah, it's my fault, but she took the toke. So it's actually what